The Canadian Grand Prix is tomorrow. Get caught up on the weekend here with me, blind Bryce Castillo, here on Blind Corner.
OMW, on my way to you. Good at what I do. OMW.
It's already Saturday, and we've already had a lot of happenings on track. I'm recording this right after qualifying. Qualifying just happened. We're going to go through briefly the other sessions of the weekend. There was only one free practice session because this is sprint weekend, and that was ended up being an extended practice session because Liam Lawson, Esteban Ocon, and Alex Albon all ended up retiring out of the session. Let's go down the list. So Liam had a technical problem, and actually the Racing Bulls team got fined for it. There's a button on the body of the car that is meant to disengage the clutch. It's the clutch disengagement system. It's very originally titled. And so that's like a button on the body of the car so that when there are marshals out on track, they can disengage the clutch and just kind of roll the car around. Well, apparently the stewards had told Racing Bulls that their design for the CDS had been questionable. And then when Liam had to get recovered because of he had a technical problem, I guess the CDS wasn't working at all. The team was fined 30,000 euros, but that fine has been suspended, I'm assuming, until they just get that fixed. Ocon also had a crash at the end of FP1. He broke his front wing, but he was able to take part in sprint quali, and he made it to SQ2. But the big talking point was Albon's crash. It was kind of mysterious in real time. The live cameras picked up Albon kind of post-impact, but they spent a long time not showing us a replay of it. I almost thought maybe they didn't have camera coverage on him, but that's the impossibility of that. It sounds really, really goofy. In fact, what happened was Alex ran over a groundhog, one of the many fauna that make their home at the Circuit Villeneuve. So that takes us to today, Saturday, the first ever sprint at the Canadian Grand Prix. It was a pretty good race start. The Mercedes both ended up having a good start off the front row. A big moment at the start was Hamilton going around is it turn 3 or turn 4, going around Oscar Piastri to take a place in the early stages. A great move. And then there's a really great battle between Russell and Antonelli in laps 6 or 7, and Kimi really pushing George and really trying to make a statement, but unfortunately he kind of couldn't hold on to it and ended up backing out of that fight. So the biggest commotion of the sprint was at the very, very end, a last-second double battle going on. We respect the TV directors in this house. 2 different battles were happening at the same time, and it was really, really tough to follow both of them. First, you had Kimi Antonelli fighting with Lando for P2. He ended up falling back after that fight with Russell and wasn't able to make it past Lando in the final stages. Then right behind that, Hamilton was having a look at Piastri, but as they made into the final chicane or the final lap, they almost nearly locked wheels, and Hamilton had to pull out, had to back off, which gave Piastri a straight way through and actually gave Charles behind a chance to make it past Hamilton and almost have a run on Piastri in the final sprint to the finish line. It was a great battle, and they were all happening at the top of the grid, so it totally makes sense why they couldn't show it. And because it was at the very end of the sprint, then they couldn't even show the replay until they got the cars into the pit lane and everybody found the replay and it was the right time and there was a bit of a lull. Overall, a really great sprint race. I've been very tepid on the sprint races, but I think this was a really solid one. And then rounding out the day was qualifying. I feel like there was not very much that happened. Charles started to have a bad time in Q2. He had asked if something broke on his Ferrari, and it sounded like maybe something did, and that difficulty in Q2 translated to difficulty in Q3. At the very end of Q2, it was Isaac Hadjar who had a little bit of a moment, who took the last lap and ended up at P1. It didn't end up converting it in Q3, but it was a good kind of shot across the bow for Isaac to kind of make a stand. And then Q3, it went down to the line. George ended up taking pole just the very last second ahead of Kimi. And so we're set up for another Merc-on-Merc fight at the start of the GP tomorrow. That's going to be really exciting, especially because I'm sure there's a lot of conversation in the team of if you guys race, it has to be clean. If you both crash, it's going to be the worst possible thing. So it was all Mercedes on the front row. Second row, Lando and Piastri, followed by Hamilton, Verstappen, Hadjar P7, Leclerc P8, Lindblad 9, Colapinto in 10. It's another tough session for Red Bull, by the way. But we have the makings of a good race tomorrow. We'll see. Hopefully the squabble between the Mercedes means that like the other teams behind get a chance, because there's a good chance that George kind of just does what he did in the sprint and take the lead and run off into the distance. Another wild card on Sunday is that the FIA have declared a rain hazard. There is a 70% chance of rain per one of the forecasts that I saw. So we'll see if they even let the cars race. That it's been a while since we've seen like significant wet racing, I think. But that's a major wild card. That could change absolutely everything tomorrow. So that's Friday, Saturday, and tomorrow. Keep an eye out. We'll be back with more after the Canadian Grand Prix. But I got something else to talk about. It's been the biggest story this whole season. The FIA and F1 made regulation refinements to the engine formula for the rest of the season, assuming there won't be any more. Some of the PR that came out about it is that making changes for next year, for 2027, is also going to be limited. The teams really want to use their chassis again. The suggestion that the FIA is trying to come up with is increasing the fuel flow rate, how much fuel you can use at any given time. But to fix that, you would have to use a larger fuel tank and redesign your whole chassis, and they don't want to do that. They want to keep the old chassis. So much so that the conversation for next year is that they want to reduce the length of races by 1 or 2 laps to kind of compensate for that fuel flow increase. But during the break before the Canadian GP, it was Mohammed bin Sulayem, the president of the FIA, he was quoted saying that F1 will go to V8 engines in 2031, if not earlier. I think that this is a scrambling sign for the FIA, that they are desperate to win the PR war that is happening right now. Drivers are upset about the regulations. Fans are upset about the regulations. No one is particularly happy. Even I am at best rationalizing the good parts of the regulations. But where we are now is that we have these regulations that were written a long time ago when F1 needed to court the car manufacturers. And those car manufacturers were really interested in hybrid and electrification processes. But now, after these rounds of races, that context for why the regulations are the way they are doesn't change the fact that people are unhappy. Just like not broadly unhappy, but like unhappy. And now the context around regulations has completely changed. F1 doesn't really need manufacturers the way that they did. F1 itself is a powerhouse sport. We are on the other side of the drive to survive boom. And so I see a world where like the F1 media is like not super bothered by the PR war going on, because really this is the FIA's problem. They made the regulations, which means it's the FIA that are in the lurch, and it's bin Sulayem who's coming out and saying like, no, you love V8s, we're going to do V8s. I mean, even Formula E have been taking digs at Formula One. I think it was at the Monaco E-Prix last week where the various officials were making fun of the battery and electric use in F1. The difficulty in changing the regulations is obvious. There's a lot of run-up to making any sort of changes on the car. And that's a fact. But what is upsetting about the snap judgment to me about this, to reassure everyone, no, don't worry, change is coming. We're going to make it good soon. They've also done a really strong job of saying that Formula One is just not going to be good for 3 or 4 years. To me, that's implicit in all of this. Everyone's statements up and down the paddock, Formula One, FIA, the drivers, everyone has kind of jumped onto this train. And I'm not upset that there's not a fast solution. It's a fact. It's going to take a long time. Even if you take bin Sulayem's stance as taking leadership of it, again, his leadership is saying, we're going to make that change when we are bureaucratically able to, and maybe the year before, 3-4 years from now. And I think if you're someone who actively hates the way that the regulations are right now, this is confirmation to you that you should unsubscribe and stop watching for at least 3 or 4 years. There's no upside here. And in this next phase of writing the next regulations, everyone is kind of passing the buck and no one wants to be the spearhead of like, this is what we're going to do. Because it's not a problem now. Everyone is frustrated with the rules, but it is going to be a problem if we spend the next 3 years complaining that the batteries are woke and they're ruining the cars, especially because the next regulations are going to have battery power. If you have been sitting in your armchair thinking that this is going to mean that the battery is dead from Formula One, you are completely wrong. And I would be happy to eat some crow on that in 3 or 4 years. But there's a lack of why. The only thing that we have right now is these regulations are bad and we don't like them. We don't like them. Here they are, and we don't like them. And frankly, V8s are very low-hanging fruit. And it seems really easy to say when you haven't written those V8 regulations yet. And for as arbitrary and proprietary as the idea of a 50-50 balance split between internal combustion and battery power is, at least like that's a principle, right? What if we made the fastest cars on Earth and they were half powered by an ICE engine and they were half powered by a battery? That's at least something to reach for. The manufacturers are interested in that. And even now, we're seeing an exploration of that principle in the idea that, okay, next year, it's going to be 55-45 or 60-40 split. So this is me kind of waving a bit of a red flag here. We're looking at the current regulations as a product of their context. F1 needed to court the manufacturers, and so we ended up here. And I think it would be a shame if the context of the next regulations was, we fucked up last time, oops. It's rudderless behavior. This is an opportunity. It is an opportunity to say the next regs will be principled, not just we need to write the new regs that are not like this. All right, let's wrap it up. And really quickly on Miami, it was really good to see the teams back on track finally after that long break. But after Miami and after tomorrow's race, we'll still probably have the same pecking order we had at the start of the season. But there's still a lot of season left to go and a lot of development work that's going to take place. I was really excited to see the Red Bull Macarena wing. I liked it. It flips the opposite way. It's got a huge slot out. I thought it was really cool. That's going to do it for me here, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe on Patreon if you're interested in this and more. Patreon.com/LFGX, 4 little letters. Lots of great stuff. We will be back in 2 weeks ahead of the Monaco Grand Prix. I've been Blind Bryce Castillo. This has been Blind Corners. Meow.